The human brain is literally an evolutionary marvel. We're talking about an organ capable of sending rovers to Mars and composing complex symphonies. Yet, when it comes to predicting our own future well-being, it houses this really fascinating, deeply human glitch. Basically, we're all running around with emotional prediction software that is fundamentally miscalibrated. So, we're going to unpack exactly why your brain consistently lies to you about what will make you happy, and more importantly, how you can use science to find a much better map.
Okay, think about a time when you were absolutely certain that achieving a specific goal was going to completely change your life. Maybe it was landing that dream job, or buying a car you'd saved up for forever. Or hey, maybe it was finally getting that expensive treadmill that is now just sitting in the corner of your bedroom acting as a very pricey clothes rack. You imagine the joy, the relief, the sheer satisfaction of it all. But when it finally happened, it just felt surprisingly ordinary. Or actually, maybe worse, you felt deeply disappointed. You got exactly what you wanted, so why on earth didn't you feel the way you expected to feel?
Let's kick things off with Part 1, Why Your Predictions Fail, and the Science of Effective Forecasting.
To really look under the hood of human psychology here, we have to look at what the field calls affective forecasting. Pioneering research by Daniel Gilbert at Harvard and Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia proves something that, honestly, most of us find a little uncomfortable to admit. Humans are systematically, consistently, and measurably terrible at guessing their own emotional futures. This isn't just an occasional goof. It's actually a default condition of the human brain to be completely wrong about how intensely we're going to feel something and exactly how long that feeling will last. The research identifies 3 primary failure modes that brilliantly illustrate why our forecasts just completely fall apart. First up is impact bias. We drastically overestimate how hard an event will hit us, whether it's for better or worse. Second is focalism. So imagine you're considering a new job. You see the shiny title, but you totally ignore the terrible commute, the unfamiliar tasks, and the everyday grind that actually makes up the context of your life. And finally, there's immune neglect. We completely forget that we possess an incredibly robust psychological immune system. When researchers studied professors who were denied tenure, or even individuals who suffered severe physical traumas, they found that these people adapted and recovered far faster than they ever predicted they would. That incredible recovery system relies heavily on what psychologists call hedonic adaptation, or you might have heard it called the hedonic treadmill. It's the process by which we rapidly adjust to new circumstances and just kind of return to our baseline emotional state. You get the promotion, you feel amazing for a bit, but within months, it's literally just your new normal. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that this isn't a malfunction. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. Think about it. If positive experiences never faded, you'd lose the drive to ever seek out new ones. And if negative ones never faded, you'd be entirely paralyzed. Our brains basically simulate this novelty peak to get us moving, but reality always delivers the adaptation. The neuroscience behind this illusion is wild because it reveals we actually have 2 completely separate brain systems for desire. The wanting system is driven by dopamine. It builds this intense anticipation and craving to motivate action. The liking system, on the other hand, is driven by opioid and endocannabinoid circuits. That system operates during the actual experience itself and generates calm satisfaction. Dopamine essentially tricks us. It makes us confuse the intense, buzzing craving for a milestone with the actual calm joy of reaching it. So you can want something absolutely desperately, but then only mildly like it once you actually have it.
Moving right along to Part 2, the societal impact, covering arrival fallacies and global scripts. So what happens when literally millions of people make these exact same cognitive errors? Well, it leads to what psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar calls the arrival fallacy. This is the false belief that crossing a specific finish line will finally produce a lasting sense of completion and fulfillment. It perfectly explains why highly successful people, like executives climbing corporate ladders or surgeons finishing these grueling residencies, often report feeling incredibly empty after finally reaching the prestigious destination they sacrificed years for. I mean, they arrived, but the lasting happiness they predicted for sure didn't arrive with them.
This whole pursuit of a hedonic destination is deeply cultural too. When you contrast Western individualism, which really focuses heavily on chasing personal, subjective emotional states, with classical Indian philosophy, the difference is staggering. Traditions detailed in texts like the Bhagavad Gita actually anticipated modern forecasting science by thousands of years. They taught nishkama karma, which is action without attachment to the outcome. They basically offered a blueprint for decoupling your daily actions from those faulty hedonic predictions, teaching us to find meaning in the process rather than just the destination.
Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman
perfectly captured why our modern script fails us with this brilliant quote. He said, "Nothing in life is quite as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it." He called this the focusing illusion. You see, our cultural script tells us to get a job, buy a house, get promoted, and retire. It promises this final, happy destination. But because of adaptation, life only ever delivers a temporary station. While you're focusing on that next milestone, it feels like everything. But the second you pass it, it just recedes right into the background. And this illusion scales all the way up to a global macroeconomic reality. Back in the 1970s, the Easterlin paradox showed that once a nation's basic needs are met, growing richer doesn't actually make its citizens happier. The comparison baseline just shifts. Then in the 2010s, Kahneman and Deaton famously found that day-to-day emotional well-being basically flattens out around an income of $75,000. And now? In the 2020s, developing nations face shifting baselines while digital natives are literally trapped in social media algorithms that industrialize our dopamine wanting systems. It creates an artificial, highly curated highlight reel that pretty much guarantees chronic dissatisfaction.
Which brings us to a really tragic irony, beautifully illustrated in researcher Sonia Lyubomirsky's happiness architecture. When you break it down, 50% of our well-being is just a genetic baseline. 40% is derived from intentional daily activities, and only 10% comes from our life circumstances. Yet, where do we spend nearly 100% of our time, energy, and stress? Yep, we spend it chasing that tiny 10% slice. We're constantly trying to change our job, our house, our income, while chronically underinvesting in the 40% slice of daily intentional practices that actually move the needle.
So let's fix that. Part 3, a better happiness map, featuring actual evidence-based solutions.
Since we know for a fact our internal simulation is buggy, we need practical, evidence-based frameworks that bypass these forecasting errors entirely. When making big life choices, you simply can't trust your own brain's simulation. First, find a surrogate. Just ask someone who is already living the outcome what their average Tuesday feels like. They completely bypass the simulation for you. Second, apply the 6-month test. Don't imagine the thrill of moving day, imagine how you'll feel 6 months later when the novelty is totally worn off. And third, try psychologist Gary Klein's pre-mortem. Fast forward a year, pretend the decision was an absolute disaster, and ask yourself why it failed. This is a game changer because it brilliantly surfaces all the hidden realities your optimistic forecasting chose to ignore.
Next, we've got to fundamentally reorient ourselves toward the process rather than the outcome. Research clearly shows we adapt to material objects incredibly fast. So instead, invest your discretionary time and money into experiences which actually resist adaptation. Beyond experiences, we need to focus on Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow, which are these states of deep, challenging engagement in a task. As surprising as it sounds, working really hard on a difficult problem actually produces more genuine well-being than passive leisure, like just zoning out on the couch. And crucially, audit your actual happiness. Start noticing what actually makes you feel good today rather than what you just predict will make you feel good tomorrow. And look, if there is one single piece of data you take away from this entire explainer, let it be this number, 80. For over 80 years, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which is the longest-running study on human well-being in history, tracked participants to find what truly matters. And the result was definitive. The single strongest predictor of lifelong health and happiness is not wealth, it's not fame, and it's certainly not your career milestones. It is the quality of your close social connections. We consistently underpredict how much our relationships matter, yet they are quite literally the ultimate buffer against life's inevitable adaptations. Which leaves us here. Genuine happiness isn't a destination you can accurately predict, and it's definitely not a finish line you can permanently cross. It is an ongoing experience built primarily on deep social connection and daily engaged meaning. We know now that your brain's prediction software is naturally flawed. It's designed to keep you running on that treadmill, endlessly chasing the horizon. But now that you can see the illusion for exactly what it is, the real question is, how will you use this new map to fundamentally rewire your pursuit of a meaningful life, starting today? We're going to